another hello, just in case people don't know, I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Roach College and the Paying for College 101 group. And I'd love to see where people are zooming in from, what year your student is in high school, how many kids you have, if you've been through this process before, anything you want to share just to give us a little sense of who's out there. That would be great. And while you do that, I'm just going to stream this. So anybody on Facebook that might want to see it in the group can also. Okay, well, we're not going to go live on Facebook because something's not working because it's telling me I'm not having permission. So we're going to ignore that for now. Okay, so let me see who's here. Wow, somebody from California. So good morning to you, New York City, another California, Omaha. Great. Okay, good crowd. So let me give you some ground rules, not that it's kind of common. This is recorded, so if you have to leave, we'll send out the recording tomorrow. Feel free to put questions in the chat. I might glance over, while I'm doing this and answer. If not, I will scroll through at the end and answer any questions. And the only other thing is that I love doing these as meetings. As you can see, we can see people's faces who want to be on video. That's great. I love that. And if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that's fine too. Just while, if you don't have anything to say, just keep yourself muted. That's my only request, so that we don't hear everybody's background noise. But other than that, if you want to, either raise your hand or unmute and interrupt me, I'm fine with that. Okay, so just out of curiosity, one more question. I'd love to hear what people have to say. Who started looking for merit scholarships? Do you understand what they are or how to find them, or just kind of curious? And I would imagine maybe you do just from being in the Facebook group itself and seeing all the conversations. But this is the perfect time if you've got a junior to get started. Okay, not yet. Not yet. Need to, because with my oldest son we were late to get to them by senior year. Yep, they are somewhat timely. Definitely read Jeff Salingo's group. Great. And so Jay's already on the tool. Okay. I'm gonna switch over and start sharing. Let's see. And okay, so oops, just give me a thumbs up if you guys can see. Okay, great. Let me go back to the beginning. So I'm going to go a little fast again, just because it's in we only have the hour. And what I like to go through is just to give people a sense of what merit aid is. So I'm going to kind of describe the different types of merit aid, and then we'll jump into the tool. But I'm going to go through the first part kind of quickly. It's just to kind of ground everybody. Okay, let me just check out my chat. Okay. So we're going to talk about the different types of merit aid. Let's get started with that. Is that the beginning? Yep. Okay. So I don't think I am at the beginning. I wasn't. No. Okay, here we are. Introduction to merit aid and how to find it. So what is merit aid? You probably also heard people talk about it as a discount. I actually think that that's a fair way of describing it too. Basically, merit scholarships are given to students not based on any sort of financial need, which is a whole nother discussion. It is primarily given to them based on their academic achievement. Majority of it is given out based on a GPA and or a test score and a combination. And to some extent, in the most plainest of language, it is a discount. So it's money taken off of what the total cost of attending that college is. There is sometimes a little confusion because there is merit. And actually, I've talked to a lot of people in the space about this. I've even talked to Ron Lieber. He's the journalist at the New York Times. We need to kind of come up with a cleaner language, because merit scholarships does get confused, which is understandable with, the National Merit Scholarship, which is awarded. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. That has to do with the PSAT. There's merit scholarships, private merit scholarships, which again is all through the private avenue and of applying through nonprofits and other organizations. And some people have actually started saying, should we call these college merit awards, because it is from the college, it is based on merit. To some extent, it is an award. It's not necessarily aid, but I just wanted to point out that there is confusion. So whenever we write in our articles, we try and make it really clear that we're writing about, merit scholarships from the college, not a private merit scholarships. So just keep that in mind when you're reading. I actually even just saw an article the other day. It was by a pretty well-known lender, and they got it all confused in their article. So just, again, kind of keep that in mind as you're looking through information just on the web in general. Okay, so merit aid or merit scholarships or merit award, and I should probably go through this presentation and clean the language up as well, comes from the colleges. In most cases, it is renewable. So if your child is awarded it, usually through the admissions process, they are going to get it for the 4 years that they are at school. It is usually, there are requirements around that, and the requirements are that they have to keep up a minimum GPA, and that unfortunately they're usually given a certain dollar amount, let's say 20,000, and that they'll receive that for 4 years, but it doesn't take into account any increases in tuition that might happen over those 4 years. I'm just telling you all these things because when you come to the point of where your student has lots of different merit awards, which I'm sure and I hope that they will, when you need to do the calculations about what the total cost is, you need to kind of keep in mind that the merit award doesn't increase, but the tuition will increase, or you should factor that in. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 different types of merit aid. I'm going to start off with automatic. So automatic means that your student doesn't have to do anything extra. They just have to send in their application, and the school is going to usually look at all the applications that come in and apply their criteria to it, and then award the merit. Some schools are really transparent. We love those schools. I'll give you an example of a few where they put their information out there on their own website, and they usually have a chart or they'll have a graph, and they will give you the distinctions between the different merit awards that they offer. So they'll say, if your child has a GPA at this amount, or if they have test scores at this amount, you can expect that this dollar amount will be awarded to them. Those are the best schools out there. We should maybe make a little list of those. And, they're pretty transparent. And, but the only thing that's a little tricky across the board is this calculation of GPA. The way your high school might calculate GPA versus the way a college calculates GPA is most likely going to be slightly different. And when it comes to these, graphs and what they're using to award aid, if you're off by, a few decimal points, it might make a difference. The reason I bring that up is I've had some cases where families were using their high school GPA and looking at the charts and then assuming that their student was going to be in a certain level. And then when they actually got the award, the student got an award at a slightly lower level. And it was all because of the calculation of the GPA. I honestly don't have like a perfect answer to solve this problem, other than the schools that your child is looking at. I would actually reach out to the schools. This is a great question for the student to reach out to the admissions officer and say, tell me how you're calculating GPA. Maybe not for sure. Maybe your student can even give them, their grades and ask them how they might calculate it. But just see if they'll give you an understanding of how they're going to calculate, recalculate the GPA, because that's the GPA that they're going to use to look at any sort of, awards that they're giving out. Okay, here's an example. I just pulled it. I've actually been building it up since 2020, just to show you how things change. Things change from year to year. So this is an example of Miami University. You can see on the far right was their grid from 2020. 2020, we were just starting. I think actually they probably put this out before the pandemic really got underway. And, SATs, ACTs were still an important part of how Miami University was awarding merit. So you can see they had a column for both what your SAT, ACT had to be, what your GPA is, and then what the dollar amount that they were awarding, whether you were an Ohio state resident or a non-resident. Plain as day, it's on their website, and that's, if you fell into these buckets, that's the money you could expect. Then you can see on the top left, this was last year's grid. And understandably, now with test optional, they took away the test score. And they didn't even say, whether or not they were going to look at test scores to award money, but they weren't including it in their grid, in their chart. So you can see the top GPA here was 3.95. Again, compare that to 2020, it was 3.5. Although in 2020, they combined that 3.5 with an SAT or ACT score. Now look at fall of 2022. Now they've changed their GPA requirements again. And they've given a little bit more definition on the dollar amounts that they're offering for in-state residents versus out of state. So nothing we can do about this. We're not going to impact the schools. I just want to kind of show you how things do change year to year, and it's all part of the business of colleges, and they are tweaking. They're working, and I'll show you a slide in a little bit. They're working with enrollment management consultants, and they're tweaking this every year to figure out how much do I need to give to certain students to attract them, how much, what's my net revenue going to be per student. And it's business behind the scenes, and I think we all know that by now, but this kind of just shows it as they tweak all of these numbers year to year. Okay. Here's just another example from University of Alabama, which is pretty well known that they heavily use merit scholarships. And this is from this year, 2022, for out-of-state students. They're pretty generous. And again, if you fall into these categories, you're going to get the money. It's not going to be a surprise, and you can plan on it in advance. Okay, so the next category of merit aid, I would call competitive merit aid. And that is aid where your student has to put in usually an additional application. Schools don't always disclose, all the information about that scholarship. They're not necessarily giving you all the qualifications of how they're going to choose the students. And the thing that's also important is that there is deadlines related to this type of aid. And so you want to get on that information as soon as possible, just so that you and your student are prepared. I mean, this is now January and you guys are juniors, you have plenty of time, but a lot of these deadlines will happen earlier than the actual college application deadline. So that's why it's important to start keeping track of this. If your student might not be, applying till maybe they're going to apply January 1st for regular admissions, sometimes schools have applications for their merit scholarships earlier than the regular application deadline. Okay, and so this is kind of on the small side. I apologize, but this is an example. It's a pretty well-known example. On the left is from USC, University of Southern California. Their regular deadline is January 1st, but their deadline for applying to any sort of merit scholarships is December 1st. It's a hard deadline. You miss December 1st, you can still apply to the school, but you will not be considered for merit scholarships, even if, you might have the qualifications that you could have gotten the money. So that's, that's why it's important to know those deadlines. Let's see, I think that on the right, I think this might be right from BU. And again, this is just pointing out that they have a separate application. They, again, aren't giving you the specifics of how they're going to award the money, but they're kind of giving you a hint and saying, most students who received these awards had SATs of over 1,500 or ACTs of over 33. So they're just clues. Doesn't mean that, your students shouldn't apply if they're, close to that range, but it just gives you a sense of what that school is looking for in terms of the caliber of the student. These are just honestly just other examples to show you, but this is why it's important to kind of dig into the college's website. So American University also has a separate application for certain scholarships. And I can't remember which school this was on the right. And also these are great questions for your students to ask the college admissions officer. Are there, applications are there scholarships that I should be aware of that I need to do separate applications for? First, scour the website, but as a backup, you can also always ask the school, ask it in a virtual session, or your student can send an email about it to their regional admissions officer. So somebody's asking, are the competitive merit awards renewably or typically not? Usually all the merit awards are renewable, based on some sort of criteria, but this is, it's what I'm going through here is just the different ways that they award it. But once they award the merit scholarships from a college, merit scholarships from a college are usually renewable. Merit scholarships from private scholarships are usually not renewable. They are one-time awards, which is another, makes it, I think, more difficult to go after private scholarships because every year you have to replenish your private scholarships. But for college scholarships, it's awarded once, and it's usually for the 4 years if you meet the requirements. And then the last category is talent. This is, for students who are really, pursuing schools and they're going after art degrees or music or dance, things like that. These types of awards. Also, it's important to look at the dates. Oops, I think I skipped a page here. Oh, I lost a page, but it's important to look at the date of the talent for talent awards, because there's going to be auditions, or there's going to be a deadline that you have to send in a portfolio. Again, look to find out that information in advance. Sometimes it's before an actual application deadline. Sometimes it could be after, but there might be deadlines about when you need to schedule auditions or schedule a review of a portfolio. Okay, so somebody's asking, when digging into the college websites, do we look at the admissions page, the financial aid page, the majors? That's a really good question. I would love to do like a whole session just on how you dig into a college's website, because you could spend hours and really actually get good information. To your question about what pages on the website to look at, I would look at all the ones that you mentioned. Absolutely look throughout all the admissions pages. Absolutely look through the financial aid page. Look at the different majors, because each department sometimes might have a separate, scholarships. Most of the departmental scholarships are usually given to existing students. Most, but sometimes there might be a few in there, for incoming freshmen. But I can't say that there's just one place within a college website to look. I'm going to show you in College Insights. We do have a link where we've been able to find it. We have a link to the page on the school's website with some of that information, but I wouldn't say that, just rely completely on our link as well. Unfortunately, colleges as a whole don't make the search process easy, and so you're going to have to look throughout the whole website, look, on the search bar of the website. I would even Google the website and Google specifically like, University of Miami merit scholarships, because there might be a page that comes up that you couldn't find on the website. Okay, so is being an athlete considered a talent merit? Probably not. The whole sports and athlete and how money is awarded, that channel is completely different to what we're talking about, except really for the D3 schools that don't award athletic scholarships. So again, the merit, your student's sport for a D3 school isn't going to be considered a talent, but they could get merit money even though they are an athlete at a D3 school. Okay, last question, then I'm going to keep going on the presentation. So Jeff's asking, what's the difference between merit aid and need-based aid? I'm going to give you a really high-level answer, but that quite honestly is like a whole presentation onto itself. But need-based aid is based on your demonstrated need, and your demonstrated need is calculated from what the cost of attendance of the colleges minus your estimated family contribution, your EFC. So that difference, if your EFC is lower than the cost of attendance, you have need, and then the school can determine if they're going to give you any money to help you with that need. So that whole process of whether they're going to give you money is a school by school decision, and their policies around it. And what merit is it doesn't look at any of those numbers. It doesn't care whether you have a demonstrated need. I mean, quite honestly, in theory, a family could be able to pay for college outright, pay the full sticker price. But if they're applying to schools where their student can be eligible for merit, then the school's going to give them merit. Again, the merit avenue, the schools are not looking at anything related to your finances. They're not looking at what your EFC is. Although my only caveat to that is, although some schools ask you to still fill out a FAFSA, even though you may not have any financial need, if you want to be considered for merit. And those schools, it's my understanding why they do that is because they want to make sure that you don't have any need, because they would take money out from different buckets to pay for your need-based money versus your merit money. But if they're evaluating you for a merit scholarship, they're not necessarily looking at your finances. Can students receive both need-based aid and merit? Yes, they can. They definitely can. Okay. So I'm just going to answer this because it's an interesting question. Anita is saying, we're getting flooded with ads to lower our EFC. Are they legitimate? It's a really good question. Yes and no. Are there ways to lower your EFC? Yes. But you have to understand those ways of lowering it before you hit your base year. And your base year, if you're a junior, you've hit your base year, because your base year ended this past December. So it's 2 years prior to when your student's going to start college. So your student's going to start colleges in fall of 2023, right? So your FAFSAs are going to be based on your tax year of 2021, which just ended. So you, unfortunately, to some extent, can't affect your EFC that much. There are minor things you can do, but the other question is, how much can you really affect an EFC? So much of an EFC is based on families' adjusted gross income. And so unless you have ways to really impact your income, the other changes to EFC are possible, but they're kind of going to be on the margin. So sorry, I got off track. I just thought it was an interesting question. Okay, oops, back here. So here are my tips about starting a college search. First of all, actually, well, 1 and 2 are kind of similar, but know your family budget, right? And know your EFC, estimated family contribution. So estimated family contribution, you can start looking at that by going to the College Board. They have a very good EFC calculator. I would just Google, and sorry, I don't have it up here, College Board calculator, EFC calculator. And I would, answer their questions, and you will get an estimated amount of what your EFC is. And what they tell you your EFC is may or may not be what your family can afford and may not be what your budget is. So that's why these are two separate activities to do. Knowing your family budget is really understanding, what you have in savings. Are there anybody else who can help contribute? And quite honestly, looking at your daily expenses, your monthly expenses, and when your child's in college, is there anything that you're going to be able to cash flow to pay towards college in addition to what you might have had in savings for college all these years? So you need to, before you start this search process, you need to have a sense, can I only at the end of the day afford $30,000 a year to send my student to college? Can I afford, maybe I can only afford 20,000, maybe I can afford 40 to 50,000. Maybe I can afford the full price. I mean, obviously it's this whole range. And the reason why this is important is because you don't want to set up expectations that if your child can get into a certain school that might be, quote, their dream school, although, I hate using that language, or their school that they really want to go to. And even with all the merit money in the world, you're still not going to be able to afford it. You should at least set those expectations in advance. I am not saying don't apply, because it might be that your student still wants to apply because maybe they want to understand if they can still get in. Maybe, you're hoping that things might change financially between when they apply and when you get the, the final numbers, but at least have these discussions ahead of time so that there's an expectation of what you can truly afford and not. And then when all of the offers come in and all of the numbers are on the table, at least you've laid it out ahead of time and said, this was my budget. And, we're going to have to cut these schools because, we can't afford it unless you might want to take on a certain amount of debt. But okay, so I just laying that out. That's we can have a whole nother discussion about that, but I think that those are important activities to go through. So once you know your EFC, then you actually can understand when you're looking at schools, am I looking at that school because I want to get merit from them, or am I looking at that school because I might be actually eligible for need-based aid? And just as I mentioned before, the way you know you're eligible for need-based aid is if your EFC is less than the cost of attendance. So again, I'll just take the example. If your EFC is 30,000 and you're looking at schools that have a total cost of between 30 and 80,000, well, you obviously have a demonstrated need. So you could then look at, for those schools, do they meet a family's demonstrated need? Some schools actually meet it 100%. Those tend to be the very selective schools because they have the endowments and that's where they choose to give their money. Other less selective schools still give need-based aid. They just may not be giving need-based aid that covers your full demonstrated need. So that's why, again, you want to know, is my EFC below the cost of attendance or is it, above? And if it's below, you should at least look at some schools and what their need-based aid policies are. I personally think it's really important to start with a wide net when you're looking at colleges, because you're going to see colleges that you've never heard of, never considered, didn't know were in these different ranges. At least kind of open your eyes and then start narrowing down, as opposed to saying, my child only wants to go to these schools and that's what we're going to look at and we're going to try and make this happen. There's so many stories. If you read through the Paying for College 101 group, and so many people, email me and said, my child's at a school I never even heard of when we started this process, or somebody, or I read about, a school in the Facebook group that was giving good merit aid. I didn't even know anything about it. I looked into it. Turns out it was a school that my child could be interested in, and that's where they're going. So I encourage people to have an open mind. When you're building your students' college list, I always include your state school, because at the end of the day, state schools are kind of the bar at which we're measuring against, and each state school has a different cost. But that's what colleges are also looking at too, because they're saying, well, I can attract you to my school, but I also know you can go to your state school, which is probably going to be your most economical choice. So they're always trying to bring if they're going to give you money, especially merit, they're trying to bring it close to the state school so that you're not making a decision about cost, about whether to go to their school based on the cost relative to your state school. You're kind of making the decision about going to their school based on other criteria that they think is better than the state school. But I think it's important to always have the state school on your college, your students list, apply. It's like kind of like the foundation school that they should have and get into, hopefully. Okay, I'm not going to go through leverage school right now because that's a little bit more complicated, but the basic idea is that as you're building as you and your student are building their list, you want to have some schools that are very similar in selectivity to where you think they're going to get in, and also are very generous, even if your student doesn't want to necessarily go there. Maybe maybe that generous school is in a location that they would never consider. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to offend any states, but maybe it's in some part of the country that they would never consider going to. But it's a school that has very similar stats to another school that your student is interested in, and it's very generous. And the reason why I recommend having this leverage school on the list is because when it comes time, and actually for the seniors is this time of year now, when they're getting all their offers, if you get an offer from a similar school and it's more generous, you can use that offer to go appeal to the school that your student really wanted to go to. So you're kind of getting all your ducks in order so that you have leverage, when you need it. You may not need it, but at least you have the leverage, because this is a process, right? The deadlines happen and you can't go back and say, oh, I wish we had included that school on the list, because it would have been nice to have known that they got in, and it would have been nice to have known that they got that merit. And maybe we could have used that in our appeal to the school, to this other school that my student wants to go to. Okay. Oh, that was out of order. Okay, so I'm going to jump now. We're about halfway through. I'm going to jump to showing you College Insights and showing you the information that's there and how you can use it to answer some of these questions. And if anybody wants to go along at the same time, if you already have an account at College Insights, feel free. But anybody wants to look, it's collegeinsights.roadtocollege.com. Okay, so let me switch. Can you guys see this? I switched. Okay, good. So if you're coming to College Insights for the first time, this is what you'll see. You do get the option of putting in 5 colleges or universities, and then we show you all the information for those 5 colleges, so you get to see what College Insights is like. You can't do any other filtering beyond the 5 schools, and you can't delete those 5 schools and add in other schools. It's meant so that you can see what the inside of College Insights looks like, and you can see all the data. And then if you want to go further, there's a monthly fee. You can upgrade, and then even within that, once you upgrade, you get 7 days to kind of use it all for free before you're actually charged. So you're giving you ways to kind of see what this is all about before you need to make a commitment. And it's $24.99 a month. It's not a huge commitment, and you can cancel whenever you want, but I just kind of telling everybody ahead of time. So I'm going to log in. Okay. So this takes a little bit, but once you log in, it's going to show you all of the schools. I'm going to go through some of the important fields, kind of show you how I use it, and also just show you some other features. But let me start on the left. You can create your own individual lists and name them whatever you want. The 5 schools that you put in to begin with, we put that into your first list. and college insights. So I think it's called the trial college list. So whatever your first 5 colleges are, that list goes there. Then you can make any other, types of lists here. I have, I use this just for examples. You can make a favorites list. I was working with somebody, I made, this is Ethan's application list. These are, schools in New England with merit. Here's generous schools with generous merit, and they have a high percentage of the students who receive the merit money. So you can, again, make any combination of lists that you want and name them. I just want to see if somebody, yeah. Okay. So that's, and then you can go back, your lists get saved. You can go back and pull up those lists. You can also search by individual schools. I don't even remember, I was looking at these schools for something, but I'll just, you just have to take off the little check mark that says all schools, and then you can search by specific school. So if I search by, for whatever reason, I was interested in knowing information about those specific schools, you can put that in, and then, you'll just get information from those schools. This is where you can save the schools. If I wanted, to save American University, I would heart it. It's going to ask me, would you like to save these schools to an existing list? And so I could add it to any lists that I just created, or do I want to create a completely new list and come up with a new name? So that's how you can, add or subtract any of the schools from any lists. And then going further, and these are 3 different filtering sections. So you have to click the little button that says search by preferences, or search by specific school, or search by list. And then in the preferences, you can search by schools based on any major, and these are majors as defined by the government. So, all these different types of majors you can choose. You can choose locations. Again, these are locations defined by the government. These regions are by the government. So you can search by a region, and you can also search by a state or multiple states. So I could pick, I could pick 3, 4, 10 states, and I could also pick a region if I wanted to. And then you can pick by the size of the school. You can pick, it goes up in increments of 1,000 up to 10,000. And then afterwards it jumps, because majority of schools are under 10,000. And then there's a handful of these bigger schools. So we kind of concentrated really, giving you the ability to have smaller increments under 10,000. And then down here, the last is academic scoring. You don't have to search by any, test score, ACT, if you don't want to, but if you want to search by a test score, you would put in, which one, ACT, SAT, you have to put in a range. And then once you select your range, you can say, show me those schools where that test score falls in the average, which is the middle 50th, or show me those schools where my student is in the, it's actually, this should say 75th percentage, but where my student is at the 75th percentile or above. So, so those are the schools, and we'll go through an example where your student is going to most likely receive merit money, because your student is going to be at the top of the academic range of the students that they generally admit. And those are the students that they want to give money to. It's also the way that they are attracting students, right? By saying, if you have a certain combination of ACT, SAT, or GPA and test score, like we looked at, or just a GPA, we're going to give you money. It's their way of pulling better students to their schools. And then you can look at by GPA. You can look at it's gonna show you the GPA that if you put whatever GPA range here, we're going to show you schools where that GPA falls into the average. So I'm just gonna pick, let's say for now, let's do like a business major, since that's pretty common. And I'm, going to say, let's look at schools in the New England area, and in the Mideast, and we'll just stay on the East Coast, in the Southeast. I'm not gonna pick a school size, kind of keep leave this open, and let's just say let's look at a school where the ACT is 1,200 to 1,300 as a range. And I'm going to say, but show me those schools where 1,200 to 1,300 is in that 75th percentage. And we'll see what comes up. Okay, so looks like we have one page full of schools, and you can see it shows you the tag of the major. If you had put in 2 different majors, it would show you which schools have, it would search for schools with those majors, and it would pull up if only a school only had 1 major, and that tag would show here. So let me just move this for a second. So what's different about here is that you can also then jump to different tabs in the data. Personally, I mean, here are the tabs that I jump to quickly. I will jump to merit scholarships, right? Because that's what we're all interested in, or a lot of us are interested in. And then the fields related to merit scholarship, it shows me what percentage of the freshmen who go to that school have no need. We've talked about what need is. And so you can see Arcadia, and this is just ironic. Arcadia is kind of close to where I am. It's in the Philadelphia area, but Arcadia only has 5% of students who don't have financial need. That means if we looked at the need-based aid, it means that a lot of students that are going there have financial need. I hope that they're giving them money for financial need. We don't know. We could look, but it's saying that only 5% of those students who attend are being asked to pay full price, or they're being given merit scholarship money. Kind of interesting. Okay, this 377%, I'll talk about it in a second, like why that number is high. But then the next column looks at what percent of those students who didn't have need were actually given merit, right? So we've now identified on the campus what students have financial need, what percent of students don't have financial need, and of the students who don't have financial need, how many of them are actually getting any sort of merit scholarship. These are the numbers that are important to look at, right? So when a school says we give out merit scholarships, that's all good and well, and that's nice to know, but you don't know underneath the surface. You don't know how many students are getting merit. You don't know what the criteria is for getting merit, and you don't know what the average dollar amount is. And those are the numbers you need to look at. So, and then this next column is what's the average dollar amount, right? That school is giving. Again, school can say we give out merit. Some schools give out an average dollar amount of $5,000. Other schools give out an average dollar amount of $25,000. So that, the numbers matter, not just, them saying we give out merit. And then this is the column where it says merit scholarship categories offered, where we put in the link if we could find it on the website. So let's see, and sometimes they change, but we'll see if this goes to Arcadia's link. So, so this actually just goes to their admissions page. So they might not have actually had any specific link that talked about merit scholarships, but let's see if there's another one, Champlain. If there is a identifiable web page like this one that says scholarships and grants, you could find it on your own. We just included it here just to save you time. And to kind of bring you directly to that information on the website. And then this last 2 columns, I'm going to skip to this other column here about if we know that the school has a full tuition or full ride scholarship. Again, we link you to that information on the website. We don't actually have all the criteria for what that full tuition or full ride scholarship would be, but we're linking you to where you can get that information. And what the more interesting information is this crowdsourced offers. So we're actually coming up on 4 years, but each year we get more and more data. We've been compiling offers that people are sharing about what their student received. So they tell us whether or not it was a need-based or merit offer, and then they tell us the dollar amount of the offer, and then what the statistics were of the students. So, what their stats were, what state they were from. So here we'll pull up and look at one. Oh, actually, let's look down here. So High Point University, we have 40 offers. And we're starting to get in, and when we're showing you the offers that are happening right now. So here, this is from the right now, from this current year, from 2022, 2023. These are students who have gotten these offers in early action. So, and we tell you what their EFC range is. So we're trying to give you as much information, although this is all anonymous. So you can say which of these students is similar to potentially similar to my student. If you have an EFC that's, 30,000, you might want to look at this student, but it's not, you're not the same student. If your family has a 30,000 EFC, this student had an under 15,000 EFC, you may not be, the college may not look at you the same, even though it's merit money, but because this student might also be getting need-based aid, although they didn't put it in here. Okay, these students all received early action. You can see the dollar amount ranges. If we kind of looked closely, obviously my guess is that the dollar amount ranges versus relative to, might be what state that they come from, or it could be what their GPA, or SAT, or ACT score is. If there is no SAT or ACT score, it means that that student applied to the school, test optional, and didn't, and so we're not sharing that information because they got the award without giving in their test scores. Obviously, this other student, gave in their GPA and gave in their test score. And they're from Maine. So, this is kind of, interesting information. Some parents have told me that they've, looked here and seen if there were some students that were similar in profile to their own student. It made them feel a little bit more comfortable that their student had a good chance of getting being accepted and getting merit money. I find it really interesting. When we get enough of a data set, which we're hoping to this year, we will be able to, do maybe more statistical analysis to look at things like, did students, and I don't know the answer to this, did students who didn't submit their test scores tend to get more money or less money, or, than the students who did submit test scores? I wish I had that information. I don't, but maybe if we get enough data this year, we'll be able to look at that. So you can look at, so this is real offers coming in this year, and then you can look at last year's offers. Again, would be interesting to compare. Did they give more money last year? Maybe it was the height of the pandemic, and they wanted to make sure that students were going to show up on campus. Were they more generous? I can't say, but it just kind of gives you a sense of what's going on at that school. So, those columns are really interesting and important if you're looking for merit. What I also tend to do is I'll skip to those columns that I just went to, and then you can sort these columns. So I'll look at, let's sort these results. And this is from in ascending order. You could sort it in descending order. And so we're looking at Georgia, the school, the top school, Georgia College State University. 51% of the students that are there have no financial need, but only 4% are getting merit. And obviously, they're getting a small amount of merit. That's not a generous school. If you were looking for merit money, that's not going to make a dent in what the cost of that college is. Talking about costs, you can scroll over, or you can go to the next tab over, and we actually show you what the in-state cost of attendance is and the out-of-state cost of attendance. And that is, I have to kind of actually confirm with you. It's not going to be your cost of attendance, because obviously it's going to increase, or next year. But this should be the current cost of attendance, or within a few $1,000s of what students are being charged, this year at these schools. So going back to kind of my example again of the family with 30,000, my family has an EFC of 30,000, I could quickly scan through, or you could sort. Let's sort this as well. I can say, well, let me see which of the schools on this list are actually below my EFC. If they're below my EFC, I'm not going to get any need-based money. I could still get merit money and make my cost even lower. So I'm scrolling University of Mississippi. If I had an EFC of 30,000, right? This school, they're telling me that the out-of-state cost is 20,000, 25,000, and they give $10,000 to students without need. And they're giving it to 62% of the students who don't have needs. So there's a pretty good chance if my student applied and they were in these test scores that they could get a merit scholarship of $10,000, which would be taken off of the cost of attendance of $25,000. Now you're starting to get into, for that school, a reasonable, dollar amount. But that's how you start to look at all the numbers. So for that family that has a 30,000 EFC, all these schools with the cost of attendance above 30,000, right? I could definitely get merit. I might get need-based aid based on that school's need-based policy. So let's just look at Temple, right? So so this is saying, and I'm actually going to double check these numbers now. I'm looking at some seem a little low to me, but maybe meaning like they might not have the room and board, but I can't say for sure off the top of my head. But let's just go with like Temple at 45,000, and I'm going to scroll over, and Temple. Only 29% of the students don't have any sort of need-based aid. But they're giving 50% of the students without any need-based aid merit. So there's a good chance that my student could get merit. It's not a huge amount. It's $8,000. But, if I'm not going to get any need-based aid and my student want to go to the Temple, this is the only possibility of how I could reduce the cost of attendance. So that's looking at the merit. You could do the same analysis if you were a family that needed to get need-based aid. You can look at the most important column to look at is the need met column. So again, going back to the example of a family with 30,000, maybe I'm looking at a school that's 50,000, so my need is 20,000. Temple is saying, we will give you money towards your need, but we will only give up to 64% of your need. So we will only give you 64% of the 20,000 that you have a need for. So they're not giving me 100%. And that's where this 13,000, the average amount, comes to. So on average, they're giving students that have any sort of financial need, they're giving them $13,000. And we also have crowdsourced some of those offers. And you can look, well, we don't have any this year yet. So last year, there were 6 people who told us that they got an offer for Temple and they got need-based money for those, based on what their demonstrated need was. Some of them also got Pell Grants. Then the other areas that are worthwhile to look at, deadlines. We've been talking about, we don't have deadlines for the merit scholarships, but we do have deadlines for whether the school has early decision, early action, early decision 2, or regular decision. So when you get a little bit further along in the process, you're going to want to pay a lot of attention to what those deadlines are, because that's going to determine if your student is applying early to any of these schools, and kind of the order in which they obviously need to make sure that they fill out and get their applications done. I highly recommend, and I should have put it on that other slide when I talked about doing a college search, that your student applies to, at a minimum 1, hopefully more, schools that have an early action deadline. You lose nothing by applying early action. There's nothing binding, and your student gets to know earlier whether they've been accepted, and it just takes the pressure off. I would also highly encourage, if there are some schools where your student is interested in that have rolling admission, to apply as early as possible in the rolling cycle. So a lot of state schools usually sometimes have early admission, that those applications open usually around, could be August 15th, September 1st. If your student applies, at the very beginning, they might know within 2 weeks whether they been accepted. They may not end up going to that school, but it just is such a huge anxiety relief to know that for you and for them, that they've been accepted somewhere, and then the rest of the process just feels a little bit easier to go through. So definitely include an early action school on your students list, potentially a rolling admission. The whole decision about applying early decision, we're going to table for now, but because that's a bigger, more important decision. Okay, other areas to look at are the admission stats. So you can, once you get your list of colleges based on the filters, sometimes what I always also do is I will sort it by maybe the early admission rates, or I will sort it by ED rates, or even the overall admission rates. So let me just explain the breakout here. Overall admission rate means that all students, it includes all students who were admitted, whether they were admitted early decision, early action, or regular decision. This is the total of how many students applied and how many students were accepted, regardless of what phase of acceptance they were in. Early decision is obviously all those students who applied early decision, how many of those got in, and we're just looking at the early decision applications. Early action, same thing. How many of the students applied early action? How many of those early action students who applied actually got in? And then we break out regular decision, which you don't always see all over the place. So how many students who just applied regular decision got in that regular decision round? The reason why that's important, and this is really like maybe for the more selective schools, I'm just going to scroll. Well, you can see for a lot of these, let's even look at St. Joe's. So overall, their admit rate is 80%, but and for whatever reason, it's kind of interesting here. It looks like they're giving preferences to students who apply early action. If you apply early action, you have a good chance of getting in. But your lowest chance, it's still a good chance of getting in, is it when you apply regular decision. Let's skip back up to High Point, another good example. So High Point, their overall admission rate is 77%. They're taking 84% of their students early decision, right? The other thing to look at is what percentage of the class did that school fill early decision? High Point's filling 51% of their class through early decision. So if you don't apply early decision and you apply in the regular decision round, your chances are lower, because there's obviously more applicants also applying that round, but also because they're taking fewer students. They're now only taking 50% of the students during regular admission when there's going to be a lot more applications. So that's why that admit rate is much lower. So depending on the caliber of school that your student's looking at, those numbers make a big difference. I don't know what's in this. Well, here, let's look at, we can sort that column. So High Point was towards the top. Chaplin College also takes a lot. When you're looking at the Ivies, or again, those like top 25 selective schools, they are taking more and more students during the early decision round. So it's unfortunate. That's just the way that the direction that they're moving. So it just means that the chances of getting in regular decision just become harder. But if you, at least you know that in advance and you're making an educated decision. I am not sharing all this information to push people to apply early decision, but at least you understand the dynamics of what's happening at different schools. And let me do one thing, because I think this will be interesting. Let's go back and look at the whole database for a second and sort it by that percentage of the class filled early decision. Because I'm curious to see, there are some schools that really take like over 60% of the class through early decision. I'd be curious to see which ones they are. Okay, let's go skip to admission stats and let's sort this. Okay, and I'll just quickly tell you, so why are some of these percentages over 100? All the data that's in this this tool come from 3 or 4 sources. They come from the government. They come from the common data set. We license the common data set information. It comes from the crowdsourcing that we talked about. And some of it comes from us I hate to use the word scraping, but we compile like information that isn't in one particular source. So usually if this percentage is over 100, it's because the college just reported wrong data or bad data, and we've chosen, and we don't necessarily we usually don't get an answer from the college for them to correct it. It just means that the information that colleges provide in the common data set is self-reported. It doesn't come from, some automated process. It's actually somebody at the college filling in the information. They may have made a typo. They may have filled the wrong information because they misinterpreted the question. But when you see these strange percentages, you can reach out to me and I'll confirm that there isn't some other mistake happening. But most of the times it's just because the college provided bad information. Okay, but with that in mind, I was talking with somebody the other day about this. So look at this, Bates College, 81% of their class is being accepted through early decision. Again, I'm not showing this to, push people to apply early decision, but if that was a school on your students list, you should at least know that, because your best chance of getting into Bates is going to be if your student applies early decision. And just, go down here. Grinnell, almost 70% of the class is taking early decision. Colgate, Emory, Hampshire College, they're all taking over 50% of their class in the early decision rounds. Again, there's a lot of philosophy we can talk about that, whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing. I don't know how much we're going to be able to impact it, but at least this is knowledge that you know. Okay, and then the last thing, because we're coming up to an hour, actually we're over an hour by 2 minutes, is these are the stats, right? So these are the stats that we're filtering by. We have the average GPA. We have whether or not the school is test optional, test blind. Obviously, like 95% of the schools now are test optional. It's interesting. You should see some of the schools that are test blind. But it is still this lingering question, and we're not going to answer it today. And I don't necessarily even have the data to support the answers. I actually have another webinar scheduled. We're going to have in 2 weeks with people in the test prep industry of whether or not schools, even though they say they're test optional, do you still need to apply with the test score? Does that give you an advantage to apply with the test score? Jury's out on that. And I think the jury's out because the colleges aren't being transparent enough themselves. So we're trying to pick apart what the answer is by just looking at whatever data we have. And so unfortunately, because they're not transparent, it leaves it up to, the recommendation is, if your student does score well, they probably should take the test. And if their score is above the 50th percentile, they probably should submit their test, just because we don't know really what's going on behind the scenes with colleges. So for that reason, we still have these test scores information here. And so we have what the average is, what the 75th percentile is, which is the important number to look at if your child wants merit. Sometimes, again, you can sort these columns. You might, if you want to do a filter and look at certain schools in certain regions by certain majors, and maybe you don't know how your student's going to perform on a test yet. So that's okay. And then you can come over here and you can filter or sort the column differently. Oh, this is the whole database now that I'm sorting. So you can see Harvard comes to the top, these are all the selective schools and what their 75th percentile is. But you can do all of this sorting, ascending, descending in your smaller list that you might want to create. This is actually helpful if your student is going to take the test and maybe they want to shoot for a certain score, because now you've looked at what that 75th percentile score is for a certain school, and that school is generous, so that if your student can get that 75th percentile score or above, they would probably have a very decent chance of getting into the school and getting merit from that school. So sorry, I could definitely go on more and more. It's almost 5 after 1. You can see how the time just goes by quickly, and I didn't even answer some of these questions, but I will go through and look through these the questions in the chat and try and include them in the follow-up email that we send out tomorrow. But let me just answer this quick question. I see, where are you getting all this information? How is it validated? So let me just go through that again a little bit more clearly, because it's important to understand that. So the four main sources are, the first source is what's called IPEDS, which is from the government. Anybody can go look at the IPEDS information. It's on a website called College Navigator. I encourage you to go look there. You can't necessarily see the information and all of the information that we have here unless you download it from the government, but it is all freely accessible. And the government does their best job by providing you with the consumer-facing website of College Navigator. The second source where we get it, as I mentioned, is the common data set. The three sources of companies that manage the common data set in aggregate are the College Board, Peterson's, and US News and World Report. So those three companies go out to all the colleges and they compile all the common data set information. Well, we know what US News and World Report uses it for. They use it for their rankings. The College Board provides some of that information on their website called Big Future. And Peterson's is a data company and they license the data. So we license the common data set information from Peterson's. We combine it with information from the government. And then the third source is the crowdsourced information, which I talked about, which is our own source of information that we compile every year. And then the fourth is just other sources of information that we felt were important and interesting. So all the links to the college websites, we compile. Whether or not the college gives a full ride or full tuition scholarship, we compile. And the test optional, test blind, which is information that's out there, we compile. So, I think the benefits to College Insights is we're doing all that work for you, so you don't have to go hunt and peck for all of this information on your own. It's in one source, one database, so that you can do a reverse lookup. So of course you could look at, Rice's common data set. You can Google Rice and common data set and you can get their individual common data set. That's great. I encourage everybody to do that. But there's no place where you can do the reverse and say, show me the schools where my students, ACT is a 33 and that's in the 75th percentage of all their test scores. Or show me a school where where the average merit award is $20,000 and above. So by compiling all the information together, we're giving you the advantage of being able to do better searches than you could do on your own if you're individually looking at each school's common data set. Okay, so lot of questions here. I will definitely go back and look at it, but hopefully this gets you guys a good start. And I will be doing more of these in the future. If you have questions, if you choose to use College Insights, if you have questions along the way, really feel free to reach out and ask me. We respond to support questions or questions in general all the time. You can put a question in Paying for College 101 as well. There are a lot of people who have used College Insights, and they would be happy to, either quickly answer your question or give you an idea of how they used it and how it helped them. But again, I hope this was helpful. And you got to eat your lunch, learn a little something. And I'm thrilled that you guys are here. This is January. It's mostly your students' junior year. Perfect time to be starting this. You got plenty of time to start, building that list. And let me just say, I feel like these lists never, they never end, meaning you add a school, you take off of school. 2 months later, you find out about another school that you add, so these are like living documents or living lists. You add, they grow, they shrink. Up to, you will see the frenzy happening in October and November on the Facebook group of people adding another school, to their students list because they didn't realize it was out there. And they want to make sure that they have a school that maybe is more financially feasible for them. So, but even though that happens to the very end, I highly encourage you to get a handle on a good list of colleges that your student is going to apply to by June. And the reason is that then they can focus over the summer on doing the essays, because that's the next, big chunk of this. And as we try and explain, the list drives everything, right? So the list is going to drive the amount of work that your student's going to have in terms of the essays that they need to do. The list is going to drive the admissibility, right? Which school, the likelihood of your student being accepted to a school, and the list is going to drive your final cost, because you can't get money from a school you didn't apply to. So when you guys are seniors next year and you're starting to get these offers and looking at the final costs, it's only going to be based on the schools that your students apply to, and your student is going to apply to the schools that you both researched and you put on the list. So, start out with a broad list and narrow it. There's nothing wrong with that. Making sure that you've kind of taken in as many opportunities as you can, and then decided which ones are the right ones, or financially, which ones aren't going to make sense, or maybe you're still going to let your student apply and you don't really know what the finances are going to be, but at least you put it out there and you'll make that decision when the final numbers come in next year. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a good rest of the day. Again, feel free to send me questions, and we'll do this again. We'll definitely do this again. It's not going to be the last time, but we'll have a lunchtime event, and we have lots of evening events as well. Take care.